What's up, everybody? Appreciate you tuning in. Okay, like an echo. All right, there it goes. I don't know. I'm still getting used to Restream, but appreciate you guys tuning in. This is the Sunday Snap Counts podcast. No, it's not sports banter. I know you see Trajan there, but he's coming on for this show. I feel like it's going to be another great show for you all. If this is your first time tuning in, look, we take kind of the early slate from Sunday, discuss the biggest storylines and everything like that to kind of catch you up on games you might have missed, or if you're in the chat and you want to kind of talk about your team, how they play today, we can definitely do that as well. So before we even get into the first game and all that, Trajan, how are you doing?
I tell you what, it's not the banter show, but I'm still going to banter a little bit. It's what I got to do. I got to fire the crowd up a little bit. You got to spark something here and there, right? But it's a great day. Packers win walk-off fashion against the Texans. The Lions beat the Vikings in walk-off fashion. I mean, wow, what a day. What a day. There's one thing that could have topped it, I guess, and that's if the Bears also lost. They're on a bye, so they can't technically lose, but, I mean, it would have made the day better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting day, which we'll get into. I know for me, watched the Patriots very early this morning. Sure, they lost to Jacksonville, but look, I've mentally prepared myself for this. I've told myself I'm watching these games for Drake May. I feel like he took another step in development today. So I'm happy even with the loss because he looks like a legit quarterback. That's all I wanted.
You saw, Drake May, fantastic game out of him. I mean, you look at him there, 26 for 37, 276, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, took a couple sacks, got back up, kept it going. I mean, it's one of those games where, as like you said, you had to mentally prepare for maybe we're not going to be good. Maybe it's going to look bad at times. But you have a young quarterback now who you're putting all your faith in. You're putting all your faith in a first-year head coach. It's all those things coming together, and that's what builds some of the best teams. I mean, you're not going to get it maybe this year, but, hey, you go into the offseason with now you have your quarterback spot figured out. Okay, that's the most important position, they say, in all of sports. If you ask me in Green Bay, it's a kicker because we can't find kickers. We have one now, I hope, but we can't find kickers. But the quarterback spot is one you have to figure out. Now that they have that kind of figured out there, now you work on the rest of the position, right? You have Hunter Henry. He's a solid guy there in the room. But the rest of there, you look, maybe pick up a receiver here or there, go into the draft, find some receiving help, maybe some guys for the defensive line, the offensive line. You can always upgrade the offensive line. I always say you can never have enough tackles in the room. Tackles are a premium in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go through tackles like you go through underwear in a week. It just seems like you could constantly use another one. So the Patriots are in a good spot. I'm not going to say a great spot, right? You still have a lot you got to see out of Drake May, but this is a game where you play Jacksonville on the road early in the morning, overseas. I don't know what time it was there, but overseas, different kind of environment. And Drake May steps into the shoes and puts together a pretty good game with a iffy supporting cast, right? I mean, you look at Caleb Williams with the Bears, that's a great supporting cast he's got around him. This is an iffy supporting cast, and he put together a 26 for 37 day, a solid day. So you love that out of him. So a great day from Drake May, and 32-16 loss. This is what you expected the Jaguars to do this season. I don't know. Maybe this is a step for them in the right direction. We hope so. If you're a Jaguars fan, but I don't know. That organization's a mess. They got to get Doug Peterson out of there. That's all I know. Trevor Lawrence is not the problem.
I mean, that's actually a great point because I felt in watching that game, you're looking at a Jags team that was 1-5 coming into the game, but you look at them, you have Lawrence, yes, even though I'm not the biggest Lawrence guy, but he's a talented quarterback. He has ability. You have Brian Thomas, Christian Kirk, I know Etienne didn't start, but
Tank Bigsby's playing well though.
Tank Bigsby looks legit as a
Hey,
running back. So it's like, how do they have talent at every level on offense and have looked so bad? So, like you said, maybe this is a win that gets them going. I don't know if I believe in them to do something like that. I know every game that the Jags are on, there's always some graphic about like their record and percentage to make the playoffs. I feel like if you're a Jags fan, you can kind of forget about that this year. But for Peterson, yeah, he's probably coaching for his job with the bulk of the season that's left. They're gonna have to start to show some momentum. Otherwise, the seat's gonna be very hot under him, even though it already is. It's just gonna get worse. So, good win for them. Will they build upon it? I'm not confident in them doing that.
it's going to be tough. I mean, you have the Packers up next if you are the Jaguars. You got the Packers followed by the Eagles in Philly. Then you play the Vikings at home, but then you go on the road to Detroit, and then you play the Texans. Then you have the Titans, but then you have the Jets, Raiders, Titans, and Colts. So, I mean, you can make it a respectable season, don't get me wrong, possibly, but there's a gauntlet of games they're about to run into, and I don't think they can. You got to right the ship against the Packers. That's what they're hoping for, right? You got to right the ship against the Green Bay Packers,
Mm-hmm.
coming off of an ugly but big win for them against the Texans. So I don't know. That's going to be tough.
Yeah, and if they turn around next week and look anemic against Green Bay, the win in London doesn't really mean much of anything. It definitely won't do anything to save Peterson's face in front of the front office and everything like that. So we had John in here in the chat already. He said, "Go Ducks." I believe he's an Oregon fan.
I think Oregon is number one now in the country. They just got moved up in the AP poll to number one. Georgia got moved to number two. I don't know if I like that. They did beat Texas, but I don't
Yeah.
know if I like that one because Penn State is still undefeated. Ohio State's got one loss. It's to Oregon. So I don't know. Or Georgia making the jump over Ohio State was, and I'm not a big Ohio State guy, but I was like, I don't know if I like that one.
Hey, it's college football. That's kind of how it works there.
We're not
SEC,
supposed to understand it.
you get a bit of a bump being in the SEC. Well, we'll see. We'll see come playoff time.
You know, the rankings are like hot dogs. You're not supposed to understand what's in a hot dog. You're just supposed to know that it tastes good when you are a top one. When you're a top team, it's supposed to taste good. That's what it's like. It's like a hot dog.
Yeah. I see Jory's in here as well, saying football season stinks.
Well,
Look,
when you're a
Jory,
Tennessee Titans fan, I'm sorry, but yeah.
Okay, you're welcome to my side of things as a Patriots fan. We're just here for the vibes. Just looking for any player we could just hold on to him and think to the future for.
The worst part is with the Titans right now, Will Levis is hurt. You aren't really learning anything about Will Levis or this team at the moment. And that's what I think kind of hurts the most, right? You like we're talking about with Drake May and the Patriots. You at least have some building blocks. You're building off of something right now. Will Levis hasn't been able to build off Jack Dilley's squat yet, right? And the offensive line isn't helping him. And we saw that. I mean, I saw that with Green Bay when they had 8 sacks on Will Levis in that game. Like, it's all heading south for the Titans fast. And you're not really learning a lot. There's no building blocks going on, which that definitely hurts as an NFL fan too. You want to be in a rebuild, but you want to see growing signs. Right now, for me, it seems like the Titans are kind of sitting stagnant and way back in the pack right now.
Well, I mean, hopefully, the shoulder injury that Levis has, he can come back from that. And like you said, show some flashes that towards the end of the season, he looks better. As George says, the offensive line is fine now. That's even more reason to get Levis back there, because we know early in the season the offensive line had some issues. Also understood with Callahan being over that, he was going to fix that. So now you would like to see that once they got the line kind of figured out, if Levis looks better behind it, or if Levis continues to struggle, then you have to understand, like, oh, maybe he's not the guy. Let's go back in the draft and get one. So I definitely see what you're saying. Like, you want Levis out there so you can make a definitive decision on whether or not he's the guy or he's not. And right now with him hurt, it's like, what do we do?
I don't like that line. I don't like that line for the Titans. I haven't seen anything I liked. I mean, you look at the last couple weeks, the Bills pass rush is they're okay, right? But then before that, I didn't they play I was just trying to I had it up. I just had it up and I lost it. They had the Colts before that. The Colts pass rush is absolutely terrible. And then you look before that, the Dolphins have nothing going for them right now. The Packers sacked him 8 times. So there's your offensive line. Ain't got nothing going right. So, I mean, yes, it might be progressing, but it's still not providing me with any kind of opinion to say, like, this is trending in the right direction. I got to see things get uptick, like the run game start to take off, or Levis not to be pressured so much and be able to make clean pocket throws and this and that. And I just don't see it right now with the Titans. So that's where I'm kind of at with them.
Well, I mean, I believe Pollard he's been okay the past couple of seasons, past couple of weeks, I should say. This week he wasn't too impressive, but you did actually bring up a team that I was going to talk about, Miami, because it's funny to me. Mike McDaniel's an offensive guy. I get it. You don't have Tua. Why does this offense continually look as poor as it is? And it's not like they're throwing out there some rookie quarterback who's learning on the job. Tyler Huntley's been around the league. He's been in Baltimore. He's gotten playing time. He has Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill on the outside. He has A-Chain and Mostert to hand the ball off to. And this offense stinks. I don't get it. Like, once again, Hill and Waddle each had, I think, 1 catch each for like 11 and 8 yards. You're telling me, as an offensive guy, you can't scheme to get those guys touches?
In the run game's fine, 188 yards on the ground against the Colts there. I mean, the run game was doing their part. It really puts into question then, you're talking Mike McDaniel then. You're talking about his play calling ability. You're talking
Yeah.
about was Tua that good that he was actually covering up for some of the play calling that was actually going on? It makes you question all those things in one. Does Mike McDaniel not able to call an offense without a good quarterback? That's what you have to wonder. You look at the good coaches out there like Matt LaFleur, right? Malik Willis steps in for Jordan Love. He finds a way with Malik Willis's talent, which Jory knows, being in Tennessee, was never his arm. He finds a way to win ball games without that. You look at Shanahan, you look at McVay, all those guys able to throw quarterbacks into a system and make it work. But looking at this Miami team, I mean, like you just hit it on the nail on the head there. Tyler Huntley's he's not a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong, not a great quarterback, but he's not a terrible quarterback. So why does the offense look so bad? How can you not get your weapons involved in any way, shape, or form? Tyreek Hill has 1 catch for 8 yards in an entire football game. This is one of the most explosive dudes in all of football, and you're telling me he can get 8 yards? That's it? That's it on a ball game? If I'm Tyreek Hill, I'm like, dude, get me out of here. I'm done with this place. I'm done, right? So they're rushing to get Tua back. I know that. I saw he was going to practice this week, maybe return back in. I don't know if that rights the ship for him. They're 2-4, right? They're 2-4. They're not out of it by any means. If Tua comes back and he can actually step in again, and I mean, I just watched the 49ers game. I almost said 49ers. The Dolphins offense looks like something again. Great. But right now it comes down to Mike McDaniels and scheming up an offense that works for Tyler Huntley and works to the advantage of the Miami Dolphins. You went against a Colts team who, like I mentioned before, their defensive line isn't great. They struggle against the run really bad. And you did go for 188 yards, right? But you got to find a way to keep churning it along. I mean, the Packers, when they played the Colts, I believe they went for 200 some yards against the Colts. I just got to double check that because I don't want to be off with my stats on that one there. 261 yards. You went for 261 yards against Colts. Now I get Josh Jacobs, everything like that, but you got A-Chain back there, right? You should be able to move the football with the run game, and it leads back to then, are you having offensive line issues or is it play calling? And I think it has a lot to do with play calling for the Miami Dolphins right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's baffling. Like, I don't know how Dolphins fans or anything like that feel about it, but if he's getting a pass on this, it's astounding because I mean, I've seen the Dolphins play a couple of times and they look, I don't know, it's just bland offense. And I know what you brought up Tua, because Tua, I believe the news is he's going to practice this week, and I believe according to Tua's expecting to play next week. So now the thing's going to be, if the thing's going to be like, if he comes back in and I guess plays well enough and the offense looks like what people think, then fine. But if not, Mike McDaniel, there might have to be like serious questions about him as a play caller and as the coach going forward. I doubt they, obviously make that decision after this year, but there's no reason that team should be 2-4. Like I said, they lost to. I get that quarterback position is very important, but to go from where that offense was last year to what it looks like this year, you would think Mike McDaniel, like, they completely overhauled the roster when they didn't. All much of the same guys are still there. So I don't know.
179 yards per game through the air with those weapons. 179 yards through the air. That's just a time where you say Waddle, Hill, bring it across the middle, run some crossers, do something simple. Just get open, use your legs to do the heavy lifting, right? You're not asking, you don't want to ask Huntley to throw it deep. You don't want to ask Huntley to try to make those throws. Make the safe route, make the safe throws, make it happen. It's all going to be okay. And, I don't get it. They right there, they 179's there. And then I was just looking for their rush yards, 128 yards per game on the ground, which does rank pretty good in the NFL. So, so far in the season, your top is the Ravens with 205. So 128 ain't bad. They're middle of the pack there in the run game. But the pass game, they cannot get the pass game going. That's where they're built to succeed. You look, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, you have weapons in that pass room, and you can't find ways to get them the football right now. I don't get it. And that's why it comes back to Mike McDaniel scheming up a good game plan to give Huntley the best shot to win a football game, because right now I don't think he's doing that for the Miami Dolphins, and that is causing this offense to look like crap and like you mentioned before, just watching them actually hurts. They are the worst team in football points per game. Like, that baffles me. You have the Giants ahead of them. The Patriots, I don't want to take a shot at the Patriots, but the Patriots are ahead of them. You have the Browns ahead of them. The Panthers are ahead of them. You're talking the Titans, the Raiders. You're talking about organizations with terrible players at positions where you need talent, right? There's no wide receiver room in that block of teams I'm looking at that is better than the Miami Dolphins. I don't think those guys outside of Nick Chubb have better running backs than what we see in Miami. They don't have a better offensive line than what we see in Miami. Right now, it comes down to coaching. What is that going to do? I don't know. You're talking about a Giants team led by Daniel Jones, who just got benched today, statistically looking better than the Miami Dolphins. That is baffling to me. I don't get it. And this season is, man, if Tua can't come back and lead them out of it, this might be a mess.
Yeah. It might very well be. And, for a guy, Tyreek Hill, who's can be very demonstrative, it will be fun. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses throughout the season. But I guess to move on to some other games here, Cincinnati, after an 0-3 start, they find themselves 3-4. You would obviously love to see Cincinnati stop doing this, or they start off so slow and have to dig themselves out of a hole. But is there any reason to think that Cincinnati can actually, I guess, turn the season completely around and even be a playoff team? Or do you think that the glaring holes on that team are just too much to overcome? Because defensively, they've had their problems. I know they went up against Cleveland and they only gave up, 14 against them, but Cleveland's offense is not necessarily one of the best in the league. But, do you have any faith in Cincinnati being able to do that?
All right. I want you to keep track of this for me, because we're going to go through the schedule and we're going to figure it out. They're 3-4 right now. We got them at 3-4. So they have a game up next against the Eagles at home. I could see them winning that game. I really could. Yeah. I think the secondary for the Eagles is rough, and I think Joe Burrow can take advantage of that, especially at home. If the defense plays anywhere near decent, I think they win that football game. So now you're talking 4-4. So you're back to 500, right? That's not terrible at this point. Yes, they are definitely trash. I agree with that one there. The Raiders. You have the Raiders. That's going to be at home too. I chalk that up to a win. You're 5-4,
Hmm.
right? Now you're 5-4. You got the Ravens in Baltimore. I don't know. Like you look at the home game, 41-38. If it's another shootout, maybe, right? Just maybe. We'll knock her back. We'll go 5-5. Now you're at five
Okay.
and five. We don't know what's going to happen. Chargers in. You're going to play the Chargers on the road. Could you win that one? I don't think the Chargers offense is a juggernaut. Like I don't think they could put up points, like heavy points, right?
Hmm.
Maybe you pull off a win there. You're 6-5. You have the Steelers at home. I could see them winning that game because the Steelers offense. I don't know if they can go pound for pound with Joe Burrow in that offense. So now you're 7-5. You have the Cowboys at Dallas. I could see them winning that football game. Like I could see them winning that football game because Dallas's offense stinks, right? Unless they make some crazy adjustments, they stink, right?
Hmm.
And the Bengals defense sucks, but hey, you put stinking against stinking. Maybe they figure it out. Joe Burrow gets a win. Now you're 8-5. You have the Titans on the road. I could see that being a win there. So now you're 9-5. You have the Browns. That's going to be at home there. 10-5. You have the Broncos at home. 11-5. You have the Steelers on the road. We chalk it up to a loss. 11-6. Yeah, I could realistically see them if, even barring that nobody gets hurt on this offense. I could realistically seeing somehow, some way they find a way to stave off the defense sucking so much and make something happen of this season. It won't be pretty. It might be a wild card, right? Probably a wild card. I think the Ravens will win that division, but I think they could find a way in. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to really believe in Joe Burrow's ability. I think offensively they can cover up for some of the deficiencies that they have on defense. I do think the defense is not going to make it necessarily easy for them, but I know Burrow's. Look, if Burrow's standing upright, he's going to make throws. You have Chase and Higgins who are definitely clicking right now after they had slow starts this season. I'm not going to count them out at all. I just think Joe Burrow is just that good of a quarterback. Now on the other side, we do have to talk about Cleveland because it looks like the Deshaun Watson issue kind of solved itself. And obviously you don't want to root for injury or anything like that, but he's making a play, non-contact, he goes down. I believe Stefanski already came out and said, looks like season-ending Achilles injury. And now we'll, I guess, get to see if it's DTR or Jameis Winston. I wonder who they're going to go with as a starter. But like, if you're running that, who would you turn to?
I'm turning to Jameis Winston. DTR hasn't shown me anything in any amount of time that has made me think like this guy could be the guy. Like I'm turning to
Mm-hmm.
Jameis Winston and calling it a day. I do I don't like Deshaun Watson. He has a lot of off the field stuff that everybody can hate on and stuff like that. Like, don't get me wrong, I do not like Deshaun Watson. But I thought it was pretty messed up that he was getting cheered when he got hurt. Like that's pretty whack. I mean, I like I said, I'm nobody wants to pray for injury for a guy. I don't care if the off the field stuff. I get that. Like he's got his own problems. He's a little messed up. Probably you want to blame anybody for Deshaun Watson playing in the NFL. Blame Roger Goodell and the NFL. Don't blame Deshaun Watson because they let him come back after all that crap was going on off the field. Blame the Cleveland Browns for signing him to a contract. It's all those things. The NFL's got a problem for letting guys who have checkered pasts get back into it, and that's its own problem in that right there. But I thought that was kind of messed up. Like just in my own opinion, that was kind of messed up. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that this guy is a good guy and like
Mm-hmm.
karma isn't a son of a gun because maybe this was karma coming back to bite him in the butt. But at the same time, it sucks to see anybody get hurt like that, especially with something that could be career ending, right? We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. His time in Cleveland is most likely done. So that's just my take on that. But yeah, I'm turning to Jameis Winston. He's proven the most. We saw him. I think they didn't they turn to DTR right off the bat? And
Yep.
he struggled 11 for 24, 2 picks. You brought in Jameis Winston, then 5 for 11 and a touchdown. Right there is the proof in the pudding for me, I guess, to say DTR, he's got some growing to do yet. Maybe you run with him and see if he can kind of stem through that growing, but that's kind of washing the season away, which it kind of is already. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, and especially if they try to move on from some pieces in that room. I know they have Zadarius Smith on that defense. He's going to be a hot ass for in the trade market. Miles Garrett in there. I don't know if they'll end up trading Miles Garrett, but I know teams are going to call about him. And they got a bunch of other pieces on that roster that I think they might look to move here and kind of try and start a rebuild in Cleveland almost, because you got a solid defense, but the offense needs a lot of change and a lot of turnover. And I don't think it's going to happen through free agency. So they're going to have to go find some pieces out there. So, or through the draft. So maybe they try to trade away some pieces here and get some draft capital.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the tough part for Stefanski is going to be: do you stick with DTR, give him the full week of preparation as a starter, and then evaluate him? I do think it's a tough spot to be in, that you're sitting on the sideline, Watson goes down, you're thrust into that, and you struggle, yes. But I do think I could listen to argument for DTR gets the first team snaps all week, prepare him, design a game plan around him, let him start next week. Obviously, if he struggles like the first half, then you could turn to Jameis Winston, who's a guy who's been around a while, has put up numbers in this league, both good and bad. Good and bad. We know the 30 touchdown, like 30 interception year, but Jameis Winston kind of knows his way around the league. And if you have to turn to him after that, I think you'll be in a better position. Because DTR is a young guy. He's been there a couple of years, but we just haven't seen him much on the field. Why not? He brings an element with like dual quarterback type. He can run a little bit. He does have an arm. Now, whether he's the most accurate, not really, because there's some throws today that he had available to him that he just missed. He threw some in the dirt. He threw some, offline. And if you give him a full week, maybe he's more prepared to go into a game next week, that maybe he shows something and that you can stick with him. But I agree, if Jameis Winston, you'd have him on standby, ready to go. All right. I guess kind of looking around at some more of these games. Let's talk. We did kind of mention Philly when looking at Cincinnati. Philly gets a 28-3 win over the Giants. I mean, it is the Giants, so you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. But I thought they looked okay. I thought Saquon Barkley looked great. But, Saquon Barkley is a great running back. He's back in New York. New York fans booed him when he first stepped on the field.
Probably
we knew that was coming. He ran like a man who was angry, to the tune of like 170.
Maybe cheered him. I would have cheered him. Been like, hey, glad you're back.
Yeah. Some fan bases do that. They recognize how good that player was for them. And when they come back, especially the way that it played out with the Giants kind of basically telling him to, go out there and see your market. And he did that, and he ended up in Philly. Sometimes fans will cheer that and kind of throw it in the face of the front office, but they chose the boo, and he played really well. But looking at the rest of the offense, did the Eagles, I guess, do anything today to calm kind of some of the nerves that a lot of people have had with this team? Because they're 4-2, but most Eagles fans, you would think they were 2-4. They just haven't been impressive in their 4 wins.
Yeah, and today was what we kind of expected out of the Eagles, was a run-heavy offense, and that's what we saw. Like you said, Saquon Barkley, 17 carries, 176 yards. You're not going to shy away from a great day like that. Jalen Hurts goes 10 for 14, 114 yards, 1 touchdown, that big one to A.J. Brown down the sideline. He did just enough, right? And that's sometimes all you need to do, and that's all you want out of your quarterback, is in a game like this where the run game is going so well. You had Gainwell getting 13 carries for 56 yards, right? The ground game was open. You had 269 yards on the ground on the day. That tells me the offensive line was playing well. They were opening up holes. And you don't really need the pass game on days like that. So I like it. The Eagles went with what was working that day, and they won the football game. It doesn't always have to be Jalen Hurts goes 25 for 30 with 3 touchdowns. I don't need that. I need Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni and this offense to do what is asked of them that day against whatever that defense weak point is. And Giants, well, their defense has got its own problems all the way around, but
Mm-hmm.
defensively, their defensive line struggles. They can't find a way to stop the run, so bury it on them. And that's what the Eagles did in this game. They controlled it from the second quarter on, 14 points in the second quarter. And then from the rest of it, I mean, defense stood tall for the Eagles in this one. It's hard to learn a lot about a team in a game like this just because the Giants, I mean, you look at Daniel Jones is still the quarterback. They need to figure it. Like, that was a terrible contract. But 14 for 21 for 99 yards, like, 7 sacks. He was sacked 7 times on the game. So that tells me a little bit about the Eagles' defensive front and their linebackers or whatever they're throwing in today was that, I mean, hey, they're getting to the quarterback, which you love to see there. Giants have their own problems. They have a lot of problems, and I don't know. This is a working project. This is a work in progress in New York, and I think it's going to be a couple years out before we're talking about the Giants really competing again for anything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. Like I don't even know what to make of the Giants at this point. They have Malik Neighbors, a good place to start. But like you said, the quarterback position is such a disappointment that you can only be so excited for them. Um, yeah, I think with the Eagles, yeah, it was very pedestrian, professional win for them. I still have questions about them going forward and whether or not they are, I guess, a legit contender in the NFC because I look at teams like, I don't know, the Niners, where Brock Purdy can air the ball out a little bit. You look at those teams in the NFC North, like that's a gauntlet to go through. And I just don't know if the Eagles offensively can be consistent enough to run through these potential teams that could be waiting for them in January and as they would hope to get to February. But I don't know. Like it's hard to see where they fit in with the NFC. I mean, the NFC as a whole, outside of probably the NFC North once again, a lot of it is up in the air. So,
there's a lot.
do you think? I mean, do you think the Eagles could be a contender playing like this?
No, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think right now, you look back at it, the Packers already faced the Eagles, and I think the Packers have taken strides forward since that
Mm-hmm.
game that the Eagles haven't. And I think right now, if
Yeah.
you put the Packers Eagles in that same game, I think the Packers win. Like, honestly, I think the Packers win. You had a first-year coordinator, defensive coordinator coming in that game. Jordan Love is, iffy. It's his first game out, not much preseason work, so you're counting that. Basically, I always say, the starters, since they don't play a lot of preseason games, that's like their first game of preseason right there. And then you have your second week of preseason, you have your third week, and then the fourth week in the NFL is like, okay, everybody's had their preseason games now, we can go. So that first week is like, you don't really blow a gasket about it or anything. You find your weak points and everything like that. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, the Packers would beat them. The Lions, they're not better than the Lions. I don't think they're better than the Vikings. I'll be honest with you. Defensively, offensively, Sam Darnold, he hasn't started seeing ghosts yet. So he's doing well, right? And then you look, 49ers, yes, they're losing to the Kansas City Chiefs now. If they can get their weapons actually healthy for 5 minutes, maybe the 49ers could do
Mm-hmm.
something. I know Ayuk got hurt today, so
Yep.
they're down and out with weapons at this point. But that's a solid team. Seattle, they're looking good. The Falcons look solid. There's a lot of good teams in the NFC. There's a lot of good teams. And you have the Commanders in your own division right now. Who,
Yep.
they were without Jaden Daniels today. We chalked it up to, I believe he only played one series. He was 2 for 2 on the day. And then they bring in, slips my mind, who the heck came in for him?
Marcus Mariota.
Marcus Mariota comes in, throws 2 touchdowns, has like a day like you would expect it. John's looking at it like this is my Oregon guy again. Like that was a day he had at Oregon. We didn't see that one coming. So that tells you how good the Commanders are playing right now. Can they even win their own division? Can they compete for their own division? I don't know. At this point. I have to see a lot more out of the Eagles in the offensive room and then defense. That secondary struggles. So there's a lot we got to see out of the Eagles yet before we can say this team can compete for a playoff game. The Buccaneers. You got the Buccaneers in that South
Mm-hmm.
there. Buccaneers down there. And like I said, the Falcons before, but then you have the Saints. The Saints are still a solid team. So, there's a lot of good teams in the NFC. Question is, are the Eagles better than most of them? I don't know. Like, this is still a question mark for me.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll see over the next coming weeks if Philly can get on a bit of a run. I feel like that's what Eagles fans want to see. Can they put together 4 solid games to get, 3 out of 4, or even win 4 straight? We'll see. I feel like it's about time we might as well talk about the NFC North at this point, because 3 of the teams, obviously with the Bears on a bye, were on display today. You had the Lions Vikings matchup, which a lot of people said potential game of the week. You had Texans Packers. A lot of people say another potential game of the week. And looking at both of those games, I feel like all they kind of let us know is, yeah, they are 3 really good teams. So I know you're a Packers fan, and obviously you watched the Texans game. What are your thoughts on the Texans? Now it's kind of seeing them up close against your team.
You know what? I honestly didn't think about it because you look at the Texans' record and you say to yourself, okay, this is a 5-1 team coming into this one. Like, this is a great football team. And then you look back at the schedule, because I was listening to the Packers pregame show on the radio, and they're like, look at the record, look at the games that the Texans have actually played and won, right? So you look at the Colts, they won that game by 2 on opening day. Then they beat the Bears by 6. You lost to the Vikings 34-7. Follow that up with a win against Jacksonville 24-20 and a Bills win 23-20. Those are all, if you look at that, and you beat the Patriots 41-21, but the Patriots are struggling. So you look at
Mm-hmm.
that bunch of games and you're like, I haven't learned a lot about this Houston Texans team, right? We haven't learned a lot about that team because they haven't played anybody great. And when they did, they lost 34-7. And you can count the Bills as a good team, but they weren't to full form yet either because they were missing pieces. And now they have Amari Cooper. So you don't know if that game would have changed if, Josh Allen has another weapon in the room. I'm not saying that the Texans aren't a good football team because I believe the Texans are a good football team. I just think without Nico Collins, they were missing a lot today. And the offensive line for the Texans, I think, has their own issues. You watch that game against Green Bay today, and the Packers pass rush. This is a team, and I tell you what, and I talked about it on my show the other day in our weekend preview. I said the Packers are an anomaly to me because they have the most takeaways in the NFL, but they create zero pressure on the quarterback. Somehow they get interceptions and fumbles without putting, because you think about how do you make a quarterback make a bad decision, right? You put pressure on the quarterback. The Packers, they don't put pressure on quarterbacks usually. Outside of Will Levis, we don't pressure quarterbacks. Maybe we chase them around a little bit, but there's not a whole lot of pressure happening from the Green Bay Packers. In this game, the Packers brought the house. Hafley brought the house in this game. He threw stunts together, schemes, whatever you want to call it there. He'd have 8 up on the line. It looked like what I'm blanking on. Flores, right? Flores from the Vikings. He's the coordinator over there.
Yep.
Flores, what he would draw up, what he drew up against the Packers, right? He had 8 guys on the line, and you were like, okay, who's coming? We don't know who's actually coming. And then all of a sudden, the Packers would only be bringing 4, or they bring 5. It was those kinds of things. And CJ Stroud and this offensive line looked out of sorts in this game. The Packers had 11 tackles for loss. 11 tackles for loss in this game. 7 quarterback hits in this game, and 4 sacks. That is pressure in your face all day long against CJ Stroud. He had a career worst 86 yards through the air. 86 yards through the air for CJ Stroud. That is not what you expect. Now, in this game, I learned that the Packers' run defense still sucks. Like, they need help with that run defense because you look at them on the ground, 142 yards. Joe Mixon had 115, and he was averaging 4.6 yards per carry. Not great in the Packers, but the Texans kind of went away from that, and then late in the game, the Packers stepped up in the run game and were able to take care of their business. So I've always said it with the Packers. I went into this weekend, I said I know 3 things and I don't know 1 thing. I said the Packers have a great offense. I think the Texans have a great offense. I said the Texans have a good defense. I don't know about the Packers. I said the Packers have a bend but don't break defense. They're going to allow you to get yards. You can get yards against Packers defense. But when it comes down to it, they find a way to get a stop. And that's what they did in this game. They found ways to get stops in this one. I believe I have my stats written up because I have my show coming up here pretty soon. So I did my stat pull-in for this one. I believe the 4 for 13 on third down. 4 for 13 on third down were the Texans in this game. That tells you a lot. That tells you the Packers got off the field on third down, which I think I came into this game, I said, I don't know if I'm going to learn as much about the Texans as I am about the Packers coming out of this game. The Packers showed me a lot. I needed to see the Packers show me that they had a solid defense that could win playoff games. I saw it in this one. I saw it in this one because they made the Texans offense, outside of Joe Mixon having a great day. I mean, you look at Stephon Diggs, 23 yards through the air there on 5 catches. And then you look at Tank Dell, no catches on the game for Tank Dell on 4 targets. You had 7 targets for Diggs and 5 catches, but 23 yards. They limited the receivers to 86 yards. Not many teams have been able to do that against the Texans so far. So you loved what you saw if you're a Packer fan. From the opposite side of it, the Texans, right? You kind of try to wipe and forget this game. You learned something because now the Texans just lost a close game. Now they know what a good team looks like. You faced a good team. I think this does build the confidence of the Texans. I think it does help the Texans moving forward there. Packers-wise, it proves a lot to me for the Packers, too, because you showed that you can win an ugly football game, right? This was not a pretty football game. Jordan Love goes 24 for 33, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's got to stop throwing the ball like he's Brett Favre out there sometimes. I mean, man, oh, man, he scares me sometimes because he starts he's the guy where 1 second he's going to make a throw that's like, you're going to carry me. You're going to carry me to the promised land. And the next time he makes a throw and he's like, dude, I want to jump through my TV and punch you right now. I want to jump through there and punch you. It's like triple coverage, just bomb that thing into there, right? And then on the last drive, we're in field goal range, and we took a shot for the end zone to Dontavian Wicks, and it's like, dude, no, why? Off the back foot. I'm like, no, we don't need that. Just trust the kicker. I was like, come on. I was losing my mind watching that final drive for Green Bay. But sometimes in bad wins, you learn something too. So I think you came away from this game thinking these are 2 solid defenses who can get things done. The offenses have questions yet, but a great football game all the way around. And I'm not worried if I'm a Texans fan. And as a Packer fan, I'm feeling good about myself because you won an ugly one. And that's what you need sometimes. You got to win an ugly one.
Yeah, because there's no guarantee when you're in the playoffs that every game's going to be a work of art. Sometimes, teams are going to play kind of a slow, methodical style, and that kind of affects how you want to attack these games as well. So a win like this can definitely help in those situations. I think with the Texans, if you hold Tank Dell to no catches, you are doing a job, because that guy, even without Nico Collins, like, he's still a tough cover. He's even tougher to cover once Nico Collins is in the lineup. Diggs had his stuff before the game when he was going at it with the Packers sidelines, so you're expecting a big game from him. That didn't happen. But I do really think that the most important player on that offense is Joe Mixon. First couple of weeks, he looked like a guy that was going to run for like 2,000 yards. Then he got hurt, missed a couple of weeks. He's been back for a couple of weeks now, and he just looks like an important piece for that team because he gives them balance. And in games like this, he's someone that they can kind of rely on and know he'll be consistent with it. I think with Green Bay, like, I've always bought into Jordan Love. I think his ability with those wide receivers, like, those wide receivers are very tough to cover. I agree with you. The times when he tries the Aaron Rodgers off the back leg, I'm like, why? You don't need to do that.
Away. Like, you close your eyes and you're like, please, for the love of Pete, just clear the receiver by. That's what I was happy about. He threw that one to Dontavian Wicks, and I was like, thank God it cleared his head by 40 feet and went through the goalpost. Like, thank you, because that was, oh my God, like, why? Why are we throwing? There was some questionable play calls too. Like, why? You're down by 1. You're trying to put yourself into field goal range or even better field goal range. Why are we going for the end zone? Why are we trying to, like, I get it. Like, maybe you're running crossers and you're like, okay, Wicks, I'm going to have you burn a streak, right? And if you beat your defender, Love, hit him on the run. But that was never open. It was, the defender was in his pocket the whole way down. That's one where if Love's, the back foot, I was like, you're going to make me cry, dude. And then even some of his throws to Dobbs had the slant route there late where he actually almost fumbled it. And he caught it up above his head, and it's like, oh my Gandhi, like, just relax. Let's just relax for a second here. I think he's still young, right? You got to remember that. He's not young, but he is. He's still young in the NFL game. He's got to learn those decisions to make. I love that he's got some Brett Favre in him. Like, he ain't afraid to sling it. But at the same time, Favre was almost too unafraid to sling it. So I need him to find a happy medium between an
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers who wants to be conservative and not throw picks and a Brett Favre who doesn't care. I want him to find the happy medium between those two guys and be okay, right? That's what I'm in for. I saw a meme. It was Jordan Love. You know, you always get the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. And it was Rodgers on one shoulder, and he's like, "Don't throw it." And then it was Favre on the other shoulder. It's like, "Gun it." It's like, okay, we're listening to the left shoulder a little bit more than the right shoulder. That's all I know right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, he made, I think it was the touchdown pass to Kraft in the back of the end zone. Like, that's a throw that because of his arm strength, he can make that. Some guys would either be afraid to throw that with I think it was like a linebacker crossing in front of there, or it might have been a safety. But for Love, he found that small opening and got it through to Kraft. Kraft made a great play as well, stretching out. But
he's
like
a very
those throws,
tight end. He's a very underrated tight end for the Packers. But yeah, that was like Favre 2.0 right there. Like, I was like,
that was
damn,
a Favre throw. So when you see that, you're like, yeah, this is a guy that's really good. And then he'll do the float off the back foot. You're like, yeah, he may complete that now, but you get into a playoff situation, if he's late on it or he underthrows one of those and it turns into a turnover when you're deep in the other team's and like in the red zone, those are killers in the playoffs. So he's obviously still growing. I know he's like 26 or something, but in terms of experience, he's still kind of learning on the job. But I'm a big fan of what Green Bay has going on, and I fully expect them to be part of the conversation once we get to January. But looking at the other teams, because this game was interesting as well. It started off with Detroit looking like they're going to run away with it. Then Minnesota turned it on, actually had the lead late, and Detroit won it with a walk-off field goal type. So they're both 5-1. I could not tell you if you line the two of them up next to each other which team's actually better, because I do think one with Flores and what he's done with the Minnesota defense, remarkable. And I feel like people forget, Danielle Hunter went to Houston this offseason. He was their main pass rusher and all that. Minnesota looks fine. For Detroit, like, I still say, like, I just love how physical they can be. I mean, this was a Jahmyr Gibbs day. Kind of been waiting for one of those for a while, as Montgomery was out of the lineup for a little bit. But they find a way to get the win. So looking at these two teams, like, should we just say that the Lions are the better team? Did this game kind of prove that, or I don't know? Like, how do you shake out these teams in the NFC North?
If you ask me, it comes down to the quarterback spot. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
For the Lions and the Vikings, because Jahmyr Gibbs, Aaron Jones. I know Jahmyr Gibbs is a great running back, but Aaron Jones is a great running back too. So you have two great running back rooms, right? And then you look at the receiving room. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Justin Jefferson. You have, what's his name in there? Jamison Williams is in the room for the Detroit Lions. Didn't have a great day against the Vikings, but still a great wide receiver. And then you got Jordan Addison on the other side there. You can make comparisons between these two rooms there. And then you look at the defenses. I mean, the defenses have their own playmakers on them. This was a game where, I mean, Sam Darnold was sacked 4 times and no Aiden Hutchinson in the lineup. So that tells you a lot about the Lions defense too, is even without probably arguably the best, or if not the best, one of the best pass rushers in football, you didn't have him in the lineup, and yet you were still able to get to Sam Darnold against a very good, I mean, a pretty good offensive line for the Vikings there. You were able to get to Sam Darnold 4 times, and one of them was late in the game there when the Vikings had to do a heave late in the game there, and you were able to get to him on that play and end the game. So, you know, it tells you a lot about the Lions defense in this game too, that yes, they lost Aiden Hutchinson, but they didn't take a huge step back. And that's what I think you like if you are a Lions fan right now. I really do think it comes down to the quarterback room, though. Who can make the most plays in a game? And I think Jared Goff against Sam Darnold, I'm taking Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff in big moments makes big throws. Sam Darnold had his moments today, right? But that interception that always comes back to bite is the turnover battle. And in this one, you had that turnover there. I mean, Detroit had their own problem with fumbles, right? Dave Montgomery fumbles the football, Vikings scoop score, right? That's their own kind of issue there. But Sam Darnold with that pick, that's a big one. And in this one, it proved to be one of the difference makers here was, I mean, the fumble on one side, the fumble or the pick on the other. So for me, it told me a lot about the Lions that I believe the Lions were one of the best teams in the NFC, and I still think that is the case, and I still think they are the top team in the NFC North as of right now. Until my Green Bay Packers can prove to me that they can beat the Lions, I still have the Lions as one of the best teams in there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fun division to watch, like for sure. There's just a lot to like about all these teams. I mean, even the Chicago team that started off kind of slow seems like they're kind of doing well right now. Although I feel like with Chicago more than probably the other three, I want to see what Chicago does within that division once those games start playing. Because I feel like even if you told me like Detroit, Green Bay, or Minnesota were going to go 500 in the division, I would say I think they're still a good team. Chicago, I want to see if this 4-2 start is legit, or are they going to go into the division and go like 1-5, and then we'll be like, well, they beat up on some bad teams, and then when they face better teams in their division, they couldn't live up to it. So I think Chicago's a team like I'm really wanting to see what they do. But I agree with you. I think with Detroit and their kind of tough demeanor and Dan Campbell, like the team represents kind of who he is. Even though there was a instance in the game today where they're like on their own 32, went for it, failed, which gave Minnesota an opportunity to score early in the game. I was like, those I could do with a little bit less of, but I know Dan Campbell's going to stick to his guns. I respect that about him, and I think the team loves that about him. I still think that they probably are the best one in that division. But yeah, if you wanted to make an argument for either of those three between Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, I think you'd have a great argument for either one of them as being the best team. So I think that division is just going to get even more fun the more that they play each other over the next couple of weeks. Like it's going to be must see TV for all of those matchups.
No, I agree. And it starts with the Bears coming off the bye week, and that's going to be a big test of Eberflus too. Is that you have the Commanders coming off the bye week in
Yep.
Washington? That's one of those games where you're coming off of a bye. You have 2 weeks to prepare for the Washington Commanders. You better come out in that game with a great game plan. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you don't win it, you better be in a dogfight of a game if you are the Bears. If you want to prove to anybody that you belong where you are, and like you said, if the 4-2 start is legit, because you have the Commanders, then you go to Arizona, then the Patriots, but then the gauntlet of games starts, right? You have the Packers, then you have the Vikings, then you have the Lions, the 49ers, the Vikings again, the Lions, the Seahawks, the Packers. That stretch of games right there. That's what we're talking about. It's a very end loaded schedule for the Bears, and it's going to be about what you can do in that top half of the schedule to save yourself for the bottom half, because there's going to be some games in there where you might trip up on the road against some of these divisional teams and stuff like that. So we're going to learn a lot about that Bears team within that stretch. I agree.
All right. Let's take a look at some of these. Well, okay, so we had a couple of late games just end, so kind of get you all caught up. So Washington just destroys Carolina 40-7. As you mentioned before, Jaden Daniels barely played in that game, but the offense still clicking. The Rams beat the Raiders 20-15, and Kansas City wins the rematch of that Super Bowl 28-18. So that was your 4 o'clock window. As we lead up to got Jets Steelers tonight, which that's gonna be fun to see. Devontae Adams' first time with Aaron Rodgers in New York. Let's see. Did we actually touch on every game so far? Well, I guess looking at the late window, I'm sure you saw some of these games, but let's go Kansas City and San Francisco. I mean, the Chiefs, Andy Reid, out of a bye. Their record is what it is. They're really good off the bye. San Francisco, I thought this was a game that they could have really shown something and prove that they're still a really good team. Yes, they have injuries. Their injuries just keep mounting with each week. I saw the play when Ayuk went down and he kind of limped off to the side. They carted him to the locker room. I was like, there goes another guy they have to try to replace. They had like Ricky Pearsall make his season debut, but it's just like, how many guys can you strip away from this team and still expect them to look like they have the past couple of seasons? I mean, I don't even know if this continues out for like 3, 4, 5 more weeks. Who's to say Seattle doesn't create some distance between them, and Seattle becomes a team in that division, and now the Niners are fighting for a wild card spot. Once again, in NFC, where the NFC North, if everything plays out a certain way, could potentially get their whole division in the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds. So if you're a Niners fan, like how should you take today's game?
You don't want to blow up the world. You don't want to freak out completely, but you're not going to win a football game when Brock Purdy throws for 54% and throws 3 interceptions. That's just plain and simple. Like that right there is a killer to anybody. And I mean, Brock Purdy, I'm not going to put this all on Brock Purdy here because I don't think Purdy's a bad quarterback. I've never thought he was a good quarterback, or not a bad quarterback. I never said that he was a bad quarterback. But you look at this 49ers team in this one offensively, the run game couldn't really get going. You had 101 yards on the ground there, 58 from Mason, 27 from Brock Purdy trying to run for his life half the time there, and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's Brock Purdy's day. Receiving wise, half these guys in this room you don't even know of, right? You don't even know half the guys in this room. Brandon Ayuk goes out with injury again. Like, that sucks. And then Deebo Samuel, he's not in the room now. You're missing Christian McCaffrey. Like, what we knew, what we remembered about this 40, your defense didn't play bad. 28 points against Kansas City Chiefs. I tell you what, that ain't bad. Like, you need your offense to step up in those kinds of games. And 18 points, like, that's with the weapons that he had. Not a terrible day, right? Not a terrible day by any means, but I don't want to freak out if I'm a 49ers fan, but unless these weapons start to come back here, and if they don't go out and make a move or two, find somebody out there, or maybe a wide receiver that's left hanging by some team, maybe if the Jets make somebody available, I don't know if you trust Mike Williams, but maybe they'll make a different guy available here. I don't know who's going to be available there in the wide receiver room. But if you can't get guys healthy, you got to find guys, because right now he's throwing to George Kittle, and that's about it. Jacob Cowing, I mean, I don't even know who that is. He had 2 catches for, I believe, 50 yards. Not a bad day. Maybe making a name for himself there. I don't know. This is a team right now that, like you said before, the Seattle Seahawks completely mopped the Falcons 34-14.
Yeah.
If they don't find a way to make separation, I would be baffled. This 49ers team it's almost desperation mode at this point. You have the Cowboys coming up next. You've got to win that one. If you lose to the Cowboys, now we can start freaking out.
Yeah.
Now we can most definitely start freaking out. Because after the Cowboys, you have the Buccaneers, the Seattle Seahawks, the Packers, the Bills, the Bears, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Cardinals. The end of the schedule, not so bad outside of the Lions there, but that back-to-back-to-back there with the Buccaneers, Seahawks, Packers, and Bills, who looked fantastic today with Amari Cooper in the room, mind you. Those are some dangerous teams that could beat up on you. So if you cannot get that win against that Cowboys, you are in full-on desperation mode. Like, we might not make the playoffs. We need to go make a trade. We need to do something to fix this right now because we're screwed.
Yeah, and I do wonder what kind of pressure there will be where Buffalo had a glaring need at wide receiver, go get Amari Cooper. The Jets, whether or not you think they had a glaring need at wide receiver, go get Devontae Adams. If you're the Niners, you're sitting at 3-4. Like we just said, Seattle had a great showing against Atlanta. I watched a lot of that game. Seattle looks like a tough physical football team, which I assumed Michael McDonald was going to eventually turn them into, but it looks like it's kind of happening right now. I know Geno Smith, he's not going to be a top 5 quarterback, but he's serviceable for that offense. He made some throws to DK Metcalf in tight windows that I'm like, if they could be consistent over a 4-week span, then yeah, I think they could create some separation in this division. And look, you're looking at Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet as your running backs. Those are 2 very capable capable guy. So I do think there's going to be some pressure on San Francisco to make a move now. Question is, who? I don't know which wide receivers are out there. The Jets, and there's this report that teams are calling about Garrett Wilson. The Jets have said they're not going to trade him, but I don't know if I could believe that. You tell me, like, if Aaron Rodgers went in there one day, it was like, I don't want Garrett Wilson here. They'll make him available. And if he ever becomes available, if I'm San Francisco, I would be the first one on the phone. Or maybe Pittsburgh, if that goes south. Pickens has been kind of demonstrative at times on that sideline. Could you pry him away? Maybe. Anthony, what's going on? Jets need to trade one of their wide receivers. It's too many weapons to share the ball. Yeah. Well, it looks like they're trying to get rid of Mike Williams. Like, that's the obvious one. But like you said, Trajan, I don't know how many teams are knocking down that door for Mike Williams. So now who else do you make available? You know it's not going to be Adams. Obviously, you just got him. Lazard is one of Rodgers' guys. He's not going to go anywhere.
What do we think?
Does it become Garrett Wilson? Oh, Jerry Jeudy would be interesting. I mean, he's in Denver. I mean, he's in Cleveland, sorry.
He's in Cleveland, and they're going to try to unload everybody. I don't know.
That might be a name.
That's an option for you. Who knows, Miami, if they keep tanking, they might make somebody available here eventually.
Well, at least for them, Tua coming back, they might be happy.
Is T. Higgins, is he franchise tag?
No, he refused to sign it.
Could you
Oh wait, no. I think he regretfully signed the franchise tag, but it looks like he's not going to sign a new deal. So that's actually another name.
Could you make the trade with Cincinnati? If Cincinnati starts to go through this spiral and they're like, let's get something for T. Higgins, and the 49ers are like, we're still in it. Maybe we can make a deal. T. Higgins, you get some draft capital if you're the Bengals. You end up getting T. Higgins if you're the 49ers. That's a win-win on both sides. The Bengals can draft defense for the future there. I mean, that's an option. That's an option. We're looking at non-contenders, but there's some contenders or some good teams with bad defenses or just not looking very good right now that could make some moves.
Right.
Cowboys,
if you have,
who knows?
Yeah, if you have a team who might be overachieving right now, but in a couple of weeks they kind of regress back to who they are, then yeah, those are teams that maybe you could get somebody from. So it will be interesting. So Anthony says
you're getting a
Higgins and Chase on their last year. Well, Chase, yeah, I keep thinking Chase got a new deal, but he didn't. He kind of just said
trying to, but they never got it done.
Yeah.
Yes, they're on their last year. You're going to get a rental. You're getting a rental in them, but I feel like the 49ers could flip it and pay them. Like, they could pay Higgins if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And then if Ayuk stays healthy and you get Ayuk and Higgins in the same room together, that's a dog. That's a good wide receiver for him. I don't want him to do that because then the Packers will struggle with the 49ers.
Right. Something tells me they have to get something done with Chase. Otherwise, Burrow's going to sit there and be like, a couple of years ago, it was me, Boyd, Higgins, Chase, Mixon. Mixon's gone. Boyd's gone. Higgins looks like he's out the door. If you're going to tell me Chase is gone too, Burrow's got to be like, what am I doing here? Yeah. Why did you pay me if you weren't going to pay anybody else around me? So I feel like Chase probably stays there. I think Higgins is gone. Like that seems like writing on the wall there. But Chase, I think that gets done probably right after the season.
I agree.
All right.
I agree with that.
All right. I mean, we kind of well, I guess one last thing though. Mahomes didn't even have a great game either. No touchdown passes and 2 picks. The Chiefs offense hasn't been all that good. I mean, I'm only saying that because I'm not going to like count them out or anything because there were questions about their offense last season. Then as they got towards the later sections of the regular season, they started playing a little bit better, and then they got into the playoffs and played much better. So I don't think no reason to panic in Kansas City, but the offense has not looked good for most of this season.
Well, Xavier Worthy hasn't been that guy. Not the guy that I expected him to be, right? And he had a chance today. There was a big play chance for him. Mahomes overshot him, right? And then he hasn't developed to be the big play guy I thought he was going to be right away in that opening game when I saw him. And,
Yeah.
Hardman's Hardman. You're not going to get massive numbers out of him. Rashee Rice going down was the big thing, I think. Like, he doesn't
Yeah.
have that big time wide receiver, right? Hollywood Brown's still out, and you don't have Rashee Rice now. That's what we thought in Adams or something else, maybe a Cooper, right? We said that right away with the Chiefs. Like, maybe the Chiefs need to target one of these big name wide receivers to give Mahomes something. I don't know. Maybe the Dolphins ship Tyreek Hill back. Maybe he gets all ticked off with the Dolphins that they stink, and he's like, ship me back to Kansas City and let me play with my boy.
Maybe we will see. Because even Kelsey, 4 catches, 17 yards. That's not great. So, yeah, we hit on all the big games this week, and we did it a little over an hour. So, not too bad. Oh, Anthony does have a question. We'll end it with this. I have a question about the Patrick Mahomes is number one in MVP odds, but there are quarterbacks with better stats. I did not know Mahomes was actually still number one in MVP odds because if I was thinking about it, I wouldn't have him number one.
Not even
I would
in
probably
the
say,
no.
I mean, you could go Darnold, you could go Goff, you could go. I know Jaden Daniels is a rookie that would never do it, but he's played really well this season. Yeah, that's kind of weird that Mahomes is number one in MVP odds.
Let's see. Who leads in touchdowns? Baker Mayfield leads in touchdowns. He has almost 1,500 yards. He's only thrown 5 interceptions on the year. Joe Burrow's got 12 touchdowns on the year, 2 interceptions. He has taken 15 sacks, which tells you a lot about the offensive line. He's got over 1,500 yards, 7.9 average. He's averaging 263 yards per game right now. I don't know. That's you could almost throw Joe Burrow's name in there if you really wanted to. Geno Smith averages
You actually could.
296 yards per game. Like Geno Smith's name. The only thing that keeps Geno out is his touchdown to interception ratio is he's throwing 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So if he throws a touchdown, he's going to throw an interception at this point, which isn't great. It isn't great at all there. Jordan Love, 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 282 per game when he's out there. He had missed 2 games, so he's got only 1,131 yards, but Jordan Love does look good. I agree. Patrick Mahomes he should not be at the top of the MVP race. Any way, shape, or form. You can put Derrick Henry in there, I guess, at this point. Derrick Henry's leading to the success of the Baltimore Ravens at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson has played better, I would say. Look at him in the run game, everything that he does for that team. Jaden Daniels has played well. The pass yards, but the run, he can run. He can do it all for you. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that you can make arguments for before Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. I was kind of look up to see where they kind of have these guys. Yeah, Mahomes is legitimately number one.
He's got a 60. This is Mahomes' stat line. 69 completion rating right now. Yards sitting at 1,235. 247 yards per game. He's got 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. QBR of 56.
Yeah, how's he the overwhelming favorite?
How the hell is he even close to the top? There are 6 quarterbacks with better completion ratings than him, and one of them is Derek Carr, and the other one is Gardner Minshew.
So yeah, because I found a story that's like, according to DraftKings Sportsbook, as of October 15th, so that's pretty recently, they had Mahomes, then Allen, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud is somebody I would throw in there as well as a guy who you could easily give it to. Jaden Daniels, Darnold, Purdy, then Burrow. Kind of crazy that Burrow's that low. Goff, Love, Hurts, Mayfield, Cousins, Dak, Kyler, and Aaron Rodgers. I'm expecting those odds to kind of change.
They have to. Overall passer rating, he is 19th in all of football in overall passer rating. Joe Burrow leads it at 110. Patrick Mahomes is 88 right now. QBR, total QBR right now, he is also sitting at 18th right now. Josh Allen leads all of football with 77, and Patrick Mahomes is 56. He's at 56 in total QBR. There's no way. There's absolutely. I'm looking at the stats, and there's absolutely no way that he's not doing that. He wouldn't even make top quarterback in the league. Tom Brady's done just as good as he done. I'm watching Tom Brady on the post game show right now. Completely fleecing Fox at this point here. He can't be a part of basically anything that has to do with pregame or anything like that. Just has to call the game and completely fleecing them out of millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
I feel like he's getting better at it. First time I heard him do it was kind of weird hearing because I actually never thought Brady was going to be a TV guy once he was done. I thought he was just going to like fade away and go off, and you might hear from him like every so often. But the fact that he shows his career, more power to him. But yeah, I think he's definitely getting better at it.
And his restrictions. Did you see his restrictions list?
Yeah, because now he's like a part owner of the Raiders or whatever. Yeah,
so he's not permitted to be in another team's facilities, not permitted to witness practice, not permitted to attend broadcast production meetings, either in person or virtually, prohibited from public criticizing game officials and other clubs, subject to NFL's gambling policy, subject to NFL's anti-tampering policy. He literally cannot be involved in anything that has to do with production of the game. All he has to do is show up and announce the game. That's it. And be a color analyst. Yep. That's all he has to do. And he makes millions of dollars doing it. Well, guys like Tony Romo, they have to be at every meeting. They have to do all of this. He doesn't have to show up jack squat. And he makes millions of dollars. This guy just fleeced Fox, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, if you can get it, go ahead and take whatever they give you. So, yeah, I feel like that's a good spot to end this edition of Snap Counts podcast. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. If you tune in after the fact, appreciate you as well. Make sure you come back next Sunday. We'll say like 6:30-ish on the East Coast for another edition. Hopefully, Trajan might be back on. Jory should be back on, or maybe we'll have Dylan. Maybe we'll have everybody on. We'll see. But yeah. So till next week, we'll be back with obviously more storylines because there's big games coming up next week. Hopefully you are back here. And before you go, make sure you hit the like button for the video. We appreciate that. And make sure you follow or subscribe Integrity Sports Network. I think that's all I got. But make sure you check out Trajan on Wisconsin Sports on the Go as well. Like you said, you have a show right after. He'll be talking about those. He'll be going deeper into the numbers with the Packers. So make sure you go over there and check him out as well. So with that, for myself and Trajan, we're out of here. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy Sunday Night Football. But just before we get out of here, who do you have winning? Jets or Steelers?
I'm interested in Russell Wilson, but I'm going to take the Jets to win it because it's a storyline for the NFL. They got to have it. Devontae Adams, Rodgers, team back up. All's great in New York. The world's spinning correctly again. The Jets will win it.
I kind of think so, too. If there's a night for Rodgers to play it up on TV, this is the night to do it with Devontae Adams.
So, I'm interested to see the amount of receptions that Adams gets to what Garrett Wilson gets looked at, and I want to see what Wilson looks like in this game. If he's targeted and if it's at a high clip, I've seen it through the years with the Packers. Rodgers loves his guys. You could have Allen Lazard standing wide open and he's only looking at Devontae Adams. I want to see if it's kind of the same with that or if he's a guy who spreads the football out. That's something I'm interested in this game. See if Wilson is still getting his fair share of touches in this ball game.
I'm sure other teams will be interested as well to see if Wilson might start getting frustrated and want out because he would be a great addition to a lot of teams. But yeah, so make sure you're back here next week for another